The tail end of what's called a pandemic for the last couple of years. I sit here in my physical reality in southern Alberta, and I'm just having this incredible ebb and flow, contraction and expansion of tears and deep, deep grief, along with a liberating, free, expansive, I have no idea where any of this is taking us feeling. And as always and forever, in a world of my creation as a God force, creating my reality, the breadcrumbs or the synchronicities have arrived this morning in the most benign ways in the form of an email or a mention of a blog or an old podcast that I had saved that I hadn't touched and forgotten about. And through making time to inhale and allow all of those words to arrive fully inside of me and integrate, I have great thought and great curiosity, and not a further understanding of the truth, even my own truth, the truth of the world around me, but rather a more expansive and curious desire for exploration. I was going to say understanding, but that's not really it. It's like I'm so hungry for diversity in thought, diversity in experience. One of the things I decided recently through a series of dots connecting in my world is that this world has, the culture on the planet has, in a united front, shifted story. The myth about who we are as human and how we relate to virology, viruses, probably bacteria and others, is this storyline, and we have governmental policies that expand and extend into school systems and medical systems, in the private and public industry, into homes, between families and relations, and how we can and will be allowed to earn a living. It isn't that we're looking to get back to a new norm. I'm so clear that the storyline of the new generation, the new world, perhaps the story of a dying world, the story of a dying paradigm, but it's maybe the last chapter in that. But whatever it is, within the span of a year and a half, the entire planetary story has shifted. What we believe and know to be true, the way we respond, the way we label things as a medical crisis, as an endemic, pandemic, whatever language you choose. That war mindset that we saw through the early 1900s and all the way through World War I and World War II, Vietnam, and onward, has been shifted and changed, and we are in a war. We're in a war mindset. Us against them. We must kill the virus. So I've had this fascination in realizing that the entire planet has created a new culture, and there's a common thread amongst countries and how we've responded, or at the very least that's what the media says. But I'll speak to Canada because that's where I live. We have shifted and adjusted how we work, where we work, the conditions of our work, if we can work, if we can't work. We've shifted how schooling is, how schooling's done, what kids wear in schooling. We wear masks. We ask questions about medical procedures if you have or have not. We've created divisions amongst family and friends and neighbors, community members. The storyline is pervasive, invasive. There isn't a conversation in my world that doesn't allow this storyline to creep in And I am totally and utterly fascinated by it. It gives me hope. It gives me hope in a time prior to a COVID world where it was like, how are we not shifting and changing our ways of being human, what we know ourselves to be as human? Why are we not following the science of the last 50 years? Why are we not adopting this as a storyline? Why are we not making changes as a result of it? And I was feeling a little hopeless in that. How many scientists and people who work in natural ecosystems who are coming forward to beg and plead with World Health Organization and governments to say, we are on a trajectory we cannot shift. The sixth mass extinction is real and it's happening. Nothing turned this ship. And then all of a sudden a story about a beautifully adaptive and resilient virus came out. We wove a story, we created policy, procedure, acting, we acted upon it, we changed, we stopped the world where we previously thought impossible. That gives me hope. For the last 10 or 15 years, I've been in conversation with women in a variety of ways, in a variety of paradigms and topics and explorations. And we've talked about the 100th monkey, my incredible friend from a distance, Louise Lebrun, dropped this into my lap a long time ago, waiting for consciousness to shift, a new idea to catch on. All we need is that 100th monkey. We just need that 1%, whatever that is, to shift the consciousness, and then all of a sudden, poof, we're doing things differently. And I wasn't seeing that in a pre-COVID world, and now I've seen it. I've seen it in action, and in a very short period of time, 3 or 4 months, the entire world stopped because a new story emerged. We bought it. We practiced it. We wore it like the truth, and it became the truth. And here we are a year and a half later. I'm fascinated by that. And so in a world where external to me, all of the social media, the community conversations are so steeped in this big, bad, evil, killing machine we have to rail against, fight against, unite against, do your part to stop, to eradicate, to annihilate. It is your community job. It's your role to help in fighting this thing. In that narrative, I find it crushing in moments as my belief and my knowing does not align with public policy, does not align with the public belief around what virus is and what it is in relation to human bodies, what we are as human beings. The science of Bruce Lipton and Candace Pert, the science that Dr. Zach Bush and so many others are bringing forward, the philosophy of Charles Eisenstein, the understanding of all of the naturalists that we've seen before us begging and pleading for us to understand our role in this, and that we work together with virus, bacteria, and fungi, that we are nothing and we have no immunity without it. All of that being ignored, squashed, quelled, credentials being taken away, people being smeared. Amidst all of that, it can feel crushing. So in my own attempt to make sense of and feel my deep grief around that, because it feels overwhelming, it feels defeated to me. It is a dying, dying world. In my willingness to soften my own internal experience of not that, in an attempt to make sense of the nonsensical, in an attempt to feel alive in a time where life is being sprayed and killed and eradicated over and over and over. I softened my gaze. I softened what I was feeling, what I was being told, my resistance inside of myself for the new storyline, the untruth in that for me. I softened it just a little. And what emerged in that softening and that willing to feel raw and vulnerable to wear my intimacy like the most stunning ball gown one could ever own. I heard this call to myth and story. If this storyline can catch wave like a wildfire, mirror the wildfires we've seen in North America and other places this year and last. If that storyline can catch up, can catch traction, can shift world policy, beliefs, medical systems, values, then why can't other stories catch like wildfire and spread? So I read a blog post from my dear, dear Louise today, talking about story as it was, and her denouncement of story. And what I came up with yesterday in an exploration was that Gaia, the planet, as a living entity, as a metaphor for who and what we are as humans, that we are of her dust, of her minerals, of her particles, of her viruses, of her bacteria and fungi. What I had an aha moment about yesterday that connected in Louise's post today is that Gaia does not live and breathe and eat story. Humans have created story about her and her relationships and her species relationships. For a millennia, time memorial, our indigenous people knew the importance of this. The oral cultures across the planet knew the importance of this. And what I'm coming to understand today is that Gaia, as she does story, is ever-changing. Story does not exist outside of the moment, outside of this profoundly sacred breath, this profoundly sacred moment of a life alive and living. Gaia's stories exist in the exhale through the skin of a frog and the inhale and the toxicity that may or may not be present, and then how that frog instinctually, intuitively knows to respond. Story exists in the moment that the fields around me in southern Alberta are sprayed with a chemical called glyphosate, and it wafts into the air, into the urban settings who parallel those fields, and into the lungs of human beings. It creates a story for those cells of the human beings who inhale that glyphosate and tells them a story about their external environment. Dr. Lipton's work talks about this, the self-receptors, and how we gain information, our cells gain information, stories, myths about the world around us, and they are temporary, they are but in the moment. And every moment we choose to think, what we choose to think is what we become. The reality and the understanding that, I'm air quoting, new science tells us, the quantum physics tells us, is that story can't exist in the future or in the past. Anything woven about the future and the past is but for the entertainment of the human brain. It can tell us about where we've come from, but it certainly does not dictate the future. And so this is an open-ended curiosity for me today after reading Louise's blog and having the aha moment yesterday. I am absolutely flooded with potential and possibility. Where can I look and feel and explore in the very exact moment of every breath? Where are the stories I can listen to when I sit out in my garden and see my plants beaten, crusty from the hot Alberta southern winds? Temperatures unprecedented, never seen before on the planet since we've kept record of temperature. What are the stories, my friends and family in BC near the fires, the devastating fires that have wiped out entire cities? What are the stories that exist on those charred lands right now? Can you go and inhale that microbiome to feed yours, to tell a story into your cells of a current reality that will map and weave a new world? Can I hold loosely any thoughts and ideas and experiences that are shared from others to me, and in the moment allow this incredible device that I wear called a body to gently take that information in and allow it to pass, inform, integrate. Allow that story to be but a moment. And in the moment I feel so deeply and I have grief and tears and snot and rage and outrage and a compressed experience, can I soften further and allow that to know it's just the story for this moment. It is just a myth, somebody else's truth, that parts might resonate for me, but it does not dictate what I am as a quantum biological being, nor how I create a new world moving forward. So often lately I look outside of my eyes and I feel alone. I am the minority. At some point the mean girls decided that the sweaters I wear are not cool enough. My choice about what I get to put in my body and what I don't is no longer mine, and the majority gets to decide for me. I am out of fashion. I am out of what is considered cool. And further to that, I have been pinpointed publicly as someone who is no longer a have. I am a have-not. And further to that, I'm dangerous to the haves. And what does that mean? I can take it, internalize it, eat it, chew it, consume it, allow it to poison me, to further dictate what my story is. Or I can take a breath and rise inside, allow more of my essence to fill my tissues. So this idea, this notion of story and myth is fascinating to me, watching it literally play out beyond my eyes and in my tissues in real time, real place. Watching my children have to make choices today that are going to dictate a future. Holding copious amounts of space and capacity for them to choose as I choose. That weaves a story. It weaves a story when I see family members pitted against other family members and saying things like, you're no longer welcome here because of your choice. That hurts. It rips people apart. It rips me apart to observe. But it is a reality in a moment. And if there's anything this world is telling us right now, it's that take a breath. Wait 5 moments. It's going to change again. Life is about transformation. It's organic. It changes, moves. Goes through a great metamorphosis every breath of every day. Every day I wake up and I look out my life, out my eyes at my life around me. It is different if I choose it to be so. Life seeks to be alive and in motion and moving. So thus holding a storyline is irrelevant and not necessary. And this too is my reminder, my softening, my letting go, not holding too tightly to any given moment. In that I get to have space in between my reaction time. I get to feel all the feels that I need to feel, as do you. And then I get to come back to that table with a softened, open, expansive, intimate, and deeply, deeply vulnerable essence. And that invites others to do the same. Instead of drawing our lines in the sand and monitoring them with guns and knives and swords and barbed wire through our words and our social media accounts, we can meet someone with open arms and some lunch sandwiches and a cup of tea, regardless of your choices or your circumstance. You are human, you are alive, and you are worthy. So at the risk of that sounding like I'm on a soapbox, I hope it sounded more like a poem in your ear holes of a new world, calling you to a deep acceptance, to deeply feeling, and to deeply knowing that this is but a moment. Painful moments every time I wake up and the government's changed rules about where I can go and where I can't go and what I have to do in my body. but fleeting in the larger scale. So I'm interested, I am curious, I'm going to continue to explore these notions of story. And if you stayed to the end of this, I invite you to do the same. I'm going to be putting a call out at some point to explore this further, to stay in my recognition of the stories that I weave and the stories I allow to penetrate me and run my bus, and the stories of a new world, a glimpse into what it means to be a deeply rooted Gaia being, and what those new stories might weave for me. So, with so much appreciation. Mahalo.